Hi, I'm Alister Chapman, and in this video I'm going to take a look at one of the fundamental concepts of video and film lighting, and that's the difference between soft light and hard light. I'm going to cover each one, looking at what each is and how it affects the images you create. Then I'll look at how to create both hard and soft light using a range of different lighting fixtures, including panel lights, COB lights, and lighting modifiers including softboxes, diffusion, and Fresnel lenses. Hard light is light that leads to crisp, sharp, and well-defined shadows where the light transitions rapidly from light to dark, where the light creates a hard shadow edge. Soft light is light where the shadows are less distinct, where the shadow's edge is smoother and the light falls away to dark more gently. There's no set definition of the point where a light source stops being regarded as a hard light and is then regarded as a soft light, but generally a light that produces well-defined shadows will be considered a hard light, while a light that produces soft edges will be considered to be a soft light. Where the light reflects off a shiny surface, a hard light will create small glints of light and specular reflections, while a soft light will produce a gentler highlight. Don't confuse the hardness or softness of a light with intensity and contrast. A soft light can be very bright, and it can also produce lots of contrast if the shadow side of the subject is very dark. Hardness and softness is primarily about the smoothness of the shadow edge. Hard light can add drama, the hard edge shadows and controlled nature of hard light making it easier to place one side of a face in darkness or to separate a character from the otherwise dark background. Hard light coming from behind a character with much of their face in shadow adding a sense of mystery. Soft light tends to be more flattering for models and actors as skin imperfections are less obvious. Soft light is often used for fashion or to create a gentler, more romantic look. For interviews, soft light is generally preferred as it provides a more natural feel. Generally, a light source that's small in area will produce well-defined shadows, while a much larger light source will produce softer shadows. But it's important to understand that the hardness or softness of the shadows a light produces isn't just about the size of the light. The distance between the light source and the subject is also very important. A large panel light, such as this Nanlite 120C panel light, will produce soft shadows when it's relatively close to the subject, as the light falls on the subject from a wide range of different angles, helping to soften the shadow edges as the light wraps around our model's face. But move it away from the subject and the light becomes harder as the range of angles the light is coming from narrows and there is less of the wraparound effect. Let's look at this in some more detail. So this light here is a Nanlite Forza 60C, and that's a full color COB stands for chip on board light, and I don't have a reflector or anything else on this light, and as you can see this is just the bare emitter, and you can see it's really rather small. Now without any adaptation, the light from this just goes all over the place. It's not very controlled, but it does give us a sort of spotlight, but it goes all over the place. But this is most definitely a hard light. Moving down the line here, this is a slightly more powerful light. This is a FC120B, but on this light I've added the reflector, and the reflector helps to focus the light, control it into a narrower, more controlled beam of light. So if I flip this one around and we look at this one on the wall, you can see that the edges of the beam of the light are much tighter, it's much more controlled, but it's still a hard light when we have it like this. And moving down to this light on the end, this is a Nanlite FC500C, a full color 500 watt light, and on this light I've got a special lens called a Fresnel lens. And a little bit like the reflector, this allows me to control the light, but this one has an advantage in that it is a zoom lens, so we can change the width of that beam. If I swing it around onto the wall, you'll see that we have a lot more control of the light now, and I can make this wider or narrower using the zoom function. And then these extra bits on the light, they're called barn doors, and they allow me to further control where my light goes, giving me much more control over exactly where I light within my scene or set. I can use the barn doors to stop the light going into the background, or if it's creating a wash on a wall in the background, I can stop the light going into the foreground. A lot more control. All three of these lights, with or without their reflectors or lenses, like this, will be considered to be hard lights. So once again, we have the FC500C, a COB, a cob light with the Fresnel lens on it. So this is a hard light. And right now, when I aim this light directly at my model, it's producing very sharp, very hard, distinct shadows, typical of a hard light. But we can turn a hard light like this into a soft light very simply by using a reflector. So if I now aim the light at the reflector, and I can use the barn doors to control where that light goes, we're going to need a bit more light, let's turn that up. Because the light now is coming from the reflector rather than the Fresnel lens, and that reflector is a much larger area, this is now producing soft light with much softer shadows on my model. The only issue with doing things this way is because we're reflecting light off that reflector, there's going to be a lot of what we call spill, and that's light that bounces off the reflector, goes into the background and things like that, that's a little bit less hard to control. But certainly we now have a soft light. Another way to convert a hard light such as this into a soft light is to use a diffuser of some sort. So I'm simply going to place this pop-up diffuser in front of the light, so it's between the light and my subject, and the diffuser does take away some of the light, so I will need to brighten it up a little bit. But now we have once again a soft light, and this is a very low cost, very affordable way to convert a hard light like this into a soft light. But similar to bouncing it off a reflector, there's going to be a lot of light scattering off the back of this reflector and forwards of the reflector, so it does make controlling where the light goes a little bit more difficult. It does really help to have the Fresnel lens because I can adjust the size of the beam of light to match the diffuser. It would be the same with a reflector, and then the barn doors control where that light goes. If I'm a little bit off the reflector, you can see how much light goes onto that back wall. So when you're using diffusion or reflection, it really helps to have a Fresnel lens to control exactly where the light goes, barn doors as well to stop it bouncing everywhere. But this still is a very easy way, very simple way of converting a hard light into a soft light. So my preferred way of converting this type of hard light into a soft light is to use something called a softbox. It might be called an octodome, is another variation, and things like that. But that is an attachment that goes directly onto the front of this light. So let's take the Fresnel lens off. Just comes off very simply like that. And now I'm going to fit the softbox. Now this does fold up. I've already assembled it just to save a little bit of time, but they don't take up much space in a car or vehicle because they fold up. And now we have a soft light. So let me just spin this around so you can see exactly what it is. Just dim it down so we don't dazzle the camera. So coming around to the front of this, inside we have a reflective dome, kind of like an umbrella, and that reflects and points and aims the light at the diffusion material. Sometimes you might have 2 layers of diffusion in the light, and sometimes your light might come with different choices of the diffusion material to have more or less diffusion. But that reflector means that all of your light is going in one direction, and it makes this very efficient and very controllable, and It's a very effective way of creating a soft light from a COB light. Personally, for more applications, I prefer to use a softbox as they provide more control compared to a reflector or diffusion frame. But if you want to create a very large soft light, you may have to use a frame. The downside to this type of soft lighting is that it requires a lot of space. If you're shooting an interview in a small office or home, there might not be enough room for a large softbox. It's also very difficult to get a large softbox above a scene if the ceiling is low. The other way to produce a softer light is to use a panel light. So this light is a Pavoslim 120C, a full color panel light. It's fairly typical of a lot of panel lights. So with this panel light, to control where the light from this light goes a little bit more tightly, I'm going to use this device. It's called an egg crate, and it controls where the light goes, giving us more control over the area that we're lighting, prevents some of the light falling into the background. The panel itself, what's really nice about this light is it's actually only less than 2 centimeters thick, about 3/4 of an inch. So that makes it really good for getting into very tight spaces, perhaps up against a wall or up against a low ceiling. But it is only 2 feet across, so when it's this far from the subject, it's actually not going to be that soft, because the angle that the light falls on the subject is quite narrow, so you don't get that really nice wraparound. So to really make the most of a light like this and to have that soft looking effect, I'm going to have to move the light in closer so that the angle that the light falls on the subject becomes relatively wider. And at the same time, I'm going to dim the light down so that we have a similar contrast. So now what you should see is, in terms of brightness, something very similar, but now the face will be much softer because the light is coming onto that face from a wider angle. Of course, if you do need to go softer, you can. Simply place 2 or more panel lights next to each other to create a larger light source. I do hope that you find this series beneficial, and I'd like to thank Nanlite and Nanlux for making it possible.